right, welcome. This is one of the initial episode of what we're calling Hanuman's Garden, and I'm here with my brother MiraKle, coming from the islands of Hawaii, and we're just here in San Diego, Southern California, just having a discussion about the intention and patterns we create in developing our own sovereignty within gardening, farming, community, and wanted to share some of his vast knowledge and experience traveling the world and being involved with numerous different projects, and wanted to kind of open it up to share your vision of what you're working on now, or whatever you would feel is kind of the good entry point to some discussions about patterns of, I guess, how we encourage positive growth in farming, community, permaculture, and self-sovereignty.
Yeah, beautiful, brother. Um, it's a big question, especially with the current climate and just there's just so much happening around the planet right now, and especially in the States, and just going through lots of changes here. And I've been doing this work for, gosh, a long time, and at least 2 decades now. And I think this concept of sovereignty is so crucial, because really at this point in juncture in humanity's evolution, we have to become sovereign. And I used to share and teach through my ministry for 15 years called divinejoy.org. Our kind of my main philosophy that I was teaching was called enlightened heart sovereignty. And so the idea was that it wasn't just about the path of enlightenment, because there's a little bit too much bypassing that can happen. There's too many tricks of the trade. When you're just on a path of enlightenment, there has to be the integration of sovereignty. So, and of course, with sovereignty, it really means about being the ruler of your own universe, the ruler of your own, your own world. And so when you bring these two aspects together, enlightenment and sovereignty, what you're creating is you're creating the heart, which is the bridge between the two. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of people giving away their rights, their divine rights, as being an enlightened heart sovereign of infinite consciousness, connected not just to humanity, but our divine birthright as an intelligence, a super intelligence of the universe. And so, obviously right now we're seeing this with masks, we're seeing this with that debate over vaccination. All these things are creating a lot of division. And really the essential quest right now, I really feel, especially in this year, is how many people can really actually move away from the matrix, which doesn't really allow sovereignty to flourish, okay, and move into a way where we can not only be sovereign individuals, but collectively activate sovereign models of how to, intelligently organize, as well as self-govern. And as we collectively intelligently organize, how do we self-govern ourselves? That's really the quest. Because a lot of people have ideas about what that means. A lot of people want to form community. A lot of people want to get to a farm and just grow their own food and activate their own gardens. And, these are all great things. But what happens when the things that we rely on, the major systems that we rely on, are no longer functional? So we have to have a new type of model, a new system, a new template. And so, that was kind of a long-winded answer to get to, from sovereignty and enlightened heart sovereignty, to what I'm working on, which is specifically in the last, 18 years of my life, have been really concentrating on how to create a new type of university. And this new university is based on eco-educational curriculum for small children as well as big children, because we're all children of God, we're all children of the earth, and finding ways that we go beyond hierarchy, which is top down, into a hollow hierarchical model. So we get into that sort of holistic space where we're not just like doing external holistic things, but we're really applying internal holism or internal holistic unified living first and foremost, and then providing a space where we can bring shared nutrient dense wisdom, so to speak, into everyone's lives on the waking, dream, and dreamless states of being. So it's not just about when you wake up in the morning as the sun rises and you got your day consciously. It's also about what's happening unconsciously, what's happening subconsciously, especially in the dream time, because our waking time and our dreaming time, or what I like to say our daydream and our night dream, it's all kind of coming into one thing now. Especially those of us who have realized that the third dimension isn't necessarily where it's all at anymore. It's actually like not serving us to completely be in the third dimensional matrix. Right. So as we transition out of that, we have to find new ways of actually how to interact, how to use languaging, not just the English language, but also like how do we consciously connect with all of everything that's communicating with us. And so that's the real key thing about sort of what we're intending to really actualize with Communiversity. So, and this is the work that we've been doing in Mount Shasta, and really my team's been kind of all over the world in 3 or 4 different places, and a lot of alliance building with many other projects around the planet that are also, there's incredible people all around the planet who are choosing to go multidimensional and really connect to how to regenerate the earth and how to actually come together and lay foundations for, way far out into future generations, and, activate those timelines.
Yeah, no, I think that's sounds like you've done a lot of traveling, and have kind of laid some groundwork for a system that could really have some foundational, I think, integrity. Because I think personally, from my experience, some of these, when you talk about permaculture or potential communities, a lot of times they're kind of based on a lack of some more, I guess, structural connection of how humans interact. And I think some of it, we could draw on indigenous elders and wisdom from all tribes around the world. And I've always felt like we all have our sort of, really just deep-rooted music heritage from what from our fathers, our mothers' lands, that were connected to plant medicine, that were connected to, it's really whatever country you went to, there was some form of a shaman or healer, traditional music. We kind of all lost that in a sense, and so I almost feel like there's been a miseducation of the, really kind of collective consciousness. And I'm wondering from your perspective how we can kind of move forward with, some people say, a rewilding, or kind of a new way to educate the youth, and even those that are ready to make this next step into self-sovereignty, and connecting back to, I think, a lot of ancestral wisdom. What do you think are some of the steps we can take that would lay that solid foundation?
Well, that's a great question, Zach. I would say that a big part of it is, all of these diseases and health-oriented things that are inflicting their separation protocols on humanity. When we get sick, when we have some kind of trauma or suffering. I mean, I've been through many of myself, and have many stories to tell about that personally, which have enabled me to be in this moment much stronger and able to carry on what, I'm still in a body and carry, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. You know what I mean? And I think in relationship to how we're restructuring society, restructuring our livelihood, is that this particular, pandemic, however you want to look at it, I call it the pandemonic, but it's basically really the shadow. It's the shadow of our matrix society finally exerting itself. And the disease is actually, I mean, it's intense. We have different reactions to it, depending on the way our point of view.
Mhm.
But I would say more than anything, it's heralding a dark night of the soul for the collective. And every single major indigenous tribe that I've sat with all around the world in many different locations, as well as places like Finhorn Foundation, Federation of Damanhur in northern Italy, many other places like the Russian Eco Village movement, based on the Anastasia Cedar series of books. All of these things, basically, like, including community university, it's like we look at the shadow, we look at the unresolved, or we look at the unhealed aspects as actually the fertilizer. And so in our matrix society, we don't really have that perspective. We don't it's not ingrained as we're growing up. There's no rites of passage. There's no real community based on this sort of like, how do we unify and how do we come together. It's a hodgepodge of a lot of different cultures coming out, and the culture that we have had is based on the matrix. And that's why, like, recently I was just watching this parody of this brother making fun of cancel culture, because cancel culture is canceling itself out. Cancel culture is canceling cancel culture, because we don't have any culture anymore. You look at our music, you look at our the way we celebrate. You look at, obviously, no one really trusts the medical world anymore. I mean, because everything's labeled as COVID-19. I mean, it's like every aspect. I mean, obviously, no one trusts our political situation. So all of these things that have made up our culture, our movies, our Hollywood, all of these things, we can't do them anymore. But we've literally given away our sovereign rights to believe. I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm saying, because we've all enjoyed movies, we've all enjoyed going out to concerts, we've all enjoyed sporting events, entertainment, but none of that's happening anymore, or it's happening without audiences. So the real quest is like, wow, we have to find what is culture for us, and like every single ethnic minority has that. Even Caucasian people, if you go all the way back, we all come from a culture that has been lost. And we've literally given all of our energy, we've given our time, we've given our effort, we've kind of bought and sold with the matrix to make money and consume more things in this culture that actually is completely false anyways. And so the blessing of all this is that in the canceling of culture, in this system that's failing, those that have literally kept intact their culture, that's where people are being drawn to. They're being drawn to indigenous plant medicine cultures. They're being drawn to coming back to the earth. I mean, that's why, like recently, you just heard about my film, New Earth Destiny, where I did that film over 13, 14 years ago. And so, but it's still valid today, because what's happening in Russia, not talking about the geopolitical situation, I'm talking about the people, the indigenous people of Russia, through this whole book of Anastasia, they're really actually like doing it. They've formed over 500 eco villages, and they're not online. They're not adhering to the technocratic world. They're really cultivating this connection to the earth, and to this connection to telepathy, this connection to understanding how to create this circadian rhythm with not only the elements and their local environment, but to actually co-create with it. And that's what's been happening in indigenous tribes, as well as in the Amazon and the Congo, and all the African tribes. I mean, all these cultures that still have tribal culture, and there's those that are awakening right now that are also choosing to either come back to be inspired by those cultures, or they're choosing to find some semblance of a new culture that's based on what we call the New Earth, or awakened consciousness. But I think it's a powerful question, because for me personally, it's really about how, um, like I adhere more to the Hawaiian concept of the rainbow, the rainbow warrior, and or it's an indigenous concept. It's the rainbow warrior tribe, because every aspect of the rainbow has to be included, or else it's not a rainbow. You know what I mean? You can't have like, greens and yellows and then no purple and then still call it a rainbow. Just like you can't have purples and blues and, not have any like red or pink or yellow and call that a rainbow. It's not a rainbow. Rainbow includes everything from black to white. And so that's really the challenge and the gift at this time, is those of us who've kind of walked this for a long time, and those who are awakening right now, we have to merge into understanding how to co-create unified field consciousness. And it really is that rainbow um, concept, because the rainbow is so beautiful when everything is included. And it's not about separating something out. And every single one of those colors of the rainbow represent a coherent frequency. It's like a bridge. And so we're bridging this sort of fertilizer of death and destruction and disease and, fear and manipulation and who's right and who's wrong and all this confusion and ignorance. And we're using that as fertilizer to find these threads, this golden thread that we're weaving, you know, you know, as a rainbow bridge, walking the rainbow bridge to this whole new way of living on this planet that's connected to a greater embodiment, a greater mastery of consciousness. And that's exactly what, me and my team have been really intending and really attempting to do, is to actually, how do we how do we merge the rainbow in a way that makes sense to everyone, that can actually be established as like a collective governance model, and where we can really actualize equal value philosophy and gender equanimity. So that means like, hey, if someone's working in the garden all day, or they're working in permaculture, how can they relate to someone who's working in, you know, absolute quantum, you know, biotechnology, and coming up with a whole new, vegan neuropeptide answer to disease problems, or coming back into deep states of coherent emptiness awareness meditation, relating to someone who's working on all the accounting and the finances, and actualizing a whole new creative project where we're going beyond this state of having to exchange a Bitcoin or a digital currency or anything that has a middleman, including fiat currency, and going into just direct energy exchange protocols. So there's all these different projects and sub projects that are a part of community diversity, that are part of the system that we call the coherent living model, which is the foundation of everything we're doing. And that engenders culture. It engenders a way in which we can move forward, because we're not only doing things during sunrise, sunset hours, but during the horizontal dream time, the night dreaming patterns, we're also communicating, we're also connecting. So it's not a separation between what's happening in the sleep patterns and what's happening in the waking patterns. It's all connected.
Yeah, no, that's I think some wise words there. And from my perspective, with this show, Hanuman's Garden, my idea is to kind of open up ideas around, how can people have some structural skills and models that make things successful. And I know with permaculture, oftentimes, unfortunately, it's like the people that are growing the food, there's kind of this imbalance of the value of time, effort versus this nourishment that we receive. And from your perspective and some of the projects you've been involved with or seen around the world, I'm wondering how can we address some of those disparities of what the farmers and someone that's creating this life nourishing food receives for value versus, sometimes we look at like, well, the person that's, maybe is the accountant or finance person, there's this exchange where their value, their ability to survive is much higher than, your farmer these days. And I think in the past it wasn't always that way. I know traditionally in ancient times in Japan, the farmer was revered as the closest being to God, because and really the richest person, because they could provide food for themselves and for the whole community. But it's as if there's this time where we kind of moved away from this value of the farmer, of the land tenders, and the nourishment they provide us. And how can we kind of address this problem with these people that are kind of at the grassroots, planting the seeds, growing the food, but oftentimes these are sometimes the people that really struggle with, I think, the economics of our current world model.
Well, I think there's two different ways to answer that question, which is a great question. Um, One of it is from my experiences in Russia, which is based on the Anastasia and Ringing Cedars philosophy, and Anastasia herself through Vladimir Megre, the author, is that it's about empowering nuclear families to go back and stewarding sovereign estate aligned land. So actually creating trust funds and creating an estate and bringing the kingdom of God back to each nuclear family. And their whole thing is 1 hectare of land, which is 2.5 acres. So if every nuclear family with the the son, I'm sorry, the mother and the father, and a daughter and a son, or whatever, they come and steward land on 2.5 acres, 1 hectare of land, and they're able then to create enough of a food forest, enough of a permaculture garden, enough herbs, enough hedge lined groves of trees. Instead of like building a fence, you're going to plant trees as your fence line, as a hedge grove. So it's actually becomes a full food forest. And if every family can do that, and this is what they're doing in Russia, so they're banding together, and they're getting I was at one of the first ever eco villages called Red Noya, and they had about 50 families. So that's somewhere around 900 to 1,000, depending on how many children, for this entire eco village, and they're all attaining sovereign ownership as a nuclear family for their 2.5 acres, but they're all on the same plot of land. Okay, and so that's that's sort of one way that I would say would be the first way, is to really bring back the farmer in everyone. Everyone has to become a farmer. Everyone has to love the land. Everyone has to understand and understand how to plant seeds, how to grow an ecologically friendly home kin domain. Kin domain is kingdom of God. Kingdom really is the domain of the kin. Kin is your lineage. That's what kin is. So everyone is a king. Actually, my last name is King, but it's really just to empower everyone that they're the king or the queen of their own land, which is that you are the kin. You are the lineage holder of your sovereign kingdom, the domain of your kin. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the first way to look at it. And there's a lot more there, which I won't go too deep into it, but you can certainly check out the books. You can get them on Kindle. Just Google Ringing Cedars of Russia. It's a 10 or 11 book series at this point. The second option, which is what I received, is that there is a greater meta global awakening happening now. Okay, and if you can imagine, through all these trials and tribulations, and this dark night of the soul is being this fertilizer of consciousness for this exaltation of this kind of mycelial network all around the planet. And there's spores that have gotten together in every location, and they're beginning to sprout now. Okay, and just because you're not seeing it on global fake news, or you're not seeing all the sort of weaponized big tech or media that's kind of just blasting all this conflicting information to confuse you and get you into what? More fear, more adrenaline, more stress. All those chemicals create more disease. That's just what it does, right? Or at least it creates an atmosphere for disease or trauma or suffering, situations where you can suffer more. And so really what it is like this greater meta global kind of mycelial awakening is happening. This activation is happening in every single country on this planet.
All right, coming back to the wrap up of the Hanuman's Garden, our nice little discussion today in Southern California. MiraKle, really appreciate your time today and sharing some of your journeys, experiences, and the current project you're working on. I look forward to talking in the near future, having some other discussions with you, hopefully, and being able to follow your work. Wanted to have you share the opportunity to just put out any resources there for the audience as far as your particular your work, or some resources they can continue to explore as they kind of re-educate themselves, as we all kind of empower ourselves towards this journey of self-sovereignty and empowering our communities locally.
Yeah, right on, Zach. Great to be here with you too. Shaka, bro.
Yeah, much love.
Yeah, so you can check out on YouTube. You can search on YouTube the title New Earth Destiny, and that is the grassroots documentary film that I did about the Anastasia inspired eco villages in Russia, as well as the Lyceum Children's School and the 10 books about the Anastasia series, which I also highly recommend, especially if you are a nuclear family and you're looking at possibly getting a homesteading project or getting back to the earth. It's very inspiring, those 10 book series. You can get them on Amazon or Kindle. Just Google Ringing Cedar series of Russia, or Anastasia, or Anastasia, as we say here in the U.S. You can also check out my web portals. The collective work we're actualizing right now is Communiversity. That is KAMUNIVERSITY.org, communiversity.org, and it's pronounced Communiversity. It's the Communiversity Institute, and Kamu means the great silence after union. So in ancient Hawaiian, that's what it means, and that's really what birthed the universe. So if you think about our education, that's definitely not what our education is based on. So we want to come from the core, the core principle, the core seed of Communiversity is Kamu, which is the great silence after union. And so check out communiversity.org, and you can also check out my personal breathwork service, transformational modality. It's called breathlight.net. And then I also have activated Soul Star accessories for the body. I make really incredible designs from the island of the gods in Bali. And you can check that out at Mustars, MUSTARZ.com. I'm also on Instagram as MiraKle King. That's MiraKle, MiraKleking. And I have a public page on FB as well.
Hey, well, again, thanks for sharing your journeys and experiences. We work towards kind of going back to coming home, back to our own gardens, and empowering ourselves to be able to feed our families, our loved ones, our communities. Peace, love, and aloha.
Okay, aloha.
Jai Hanuman Gyan Gun Sagar Jai Kapesati Ulok Ujag Rama Tuta Tulita Baladama Anjani Putra Pavana Sutanama Mahavira Vikrama Bajrangi Kumati Nivara Samati Kesangi Anchana Varana Viraja Subesa Anana Kundala Kunchita Kesa Advaja Viraj Kande सुखवारे असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे अष्ट सिद्ध नवनिधि के दाता सबर दीन जानकी माता तामर शयन तुम्हारे पास सदा रहो रघुपति के दास तुम्हारो भजन राम को पावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे अंत काल रघुबर पुर जाए जहाँ नाम हरि भक्त कहाए और देवत चित्रन करे हनुमत से सर्व सुख करे संतत कते मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीर संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीर संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा संकट ते मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरे